Well, telling us a little bit more and joining us now to tell us why a diverse workplace is a successful one is the CEO of Global Diversity Practice. It is, of course, Farrah Qureshi. Farrah, thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you on board. Now, let's talk about you, if we can.
Of course.
And we'd like to find out a little bit more about the person behind, of course, the success for so many other organisations. Starting out in consultancy. Now, consultancy is a business far and wide and diversified as any. Why diversity and inclusion for you?
Great question, actually. My journey started professionally and personally way before I was even born. Actually, my journey started with the experiences of my father. My father was from a very poor farming family in Pakistan. So poor, there was no school in the village that he was born in. And he would regularly walk 6 kilometres per way to get his education every day. And he succeeded because he thought education and awareness was the way to change the world. And so from that poor farming family, he got a successful career in Pakistan, which is my country of origin. And one day, like many peoples across the world, there was an invitation to go to the UK to fulfill skill shortages, to look at opportunities for jobs that weren't being filled by local talent. And so my father took the opportunity, like many people across the world. He arrived on the sunny or not so sunny shores of the UK, and he went out to find work. And more often than not, the doors were closed. They weren't opened, not because of his lack of talent or ability, but because of other factors like his identity. And he would regularly see signs on windows of organisations and offices which were really quite abrupt in terms of who he was and why he wasn't welcome. And so for me as a child, I remember the sound of his footsteps. Every day he would go out to feed his family, full of hope and ambition. Today is the day he gets to contribute and participate. But those very same footsteps were heavy and despondent at the end of a day when he came back and he'd been rejected numerous times for things that he had no control over. So, however, one day he found somebody that broke the cycle and he went on to be extremely successful in his career. He became an entrepreneur, he contributed to society, but most of all, he set the scene for me as his first daughter to follow in those footsteps, which were play your part, do your bit for the world, make sure that you take your professional and personal experiences, combine them, and then use your platform and your voice to transform mindsets, to help people connect ability and talent, to help people to understand our experiences, our journeys, and how if we open doors and welcome all, then actually everybody wins. And so that's been my journey. That was his, and then I had my own set of experiences. And from the consultancy perspective, going back to your point, I've combined all the disciplines that I've learned through my academic career, then in the world of consultancy working on client solutions, then as a business leader where I was delivering sales results, targets, opening new markets, delivering on the bottom line. And then as a head of global D&I working with C-suite executives, where I started Global Diversity Practice. And then as an entrepreneur 15 years ago, I set up the business in the UK, in a small town in the north where I live and still live, and set up the business from my dining table. And now, 185 countries later, working with Fortune 500 companies, leading brands and companies across the world, I find myself here in Dubai. That's my journey.
And thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your dad's journey as well. I mean, the good news is that times they have changed. So there's the bad news. The sad news is that it's taken so long for those times to change, but they have. And diversity and inclusion is more important than ever in my understanding at the moment for the business world and my reading of the business world. But is that the case at the moment? It's taken a long time to get to where we are, but is it more important than it's ever been before?
Absolutely. The phone doesn't stop ringing, figuratively speaking. maybe 10, 15 years ago, we were banging on doors, trying to make the connections with operational excellence, with innovation, with productivity, with performance, with new ways of looking at the world, and also with an eye on the future. What's the workplace of the future going to look like? What is the talent of the future want? What does that look like different to today? How can we create organizations that create safe spaces, compelling spaces, and recognize us so that we can bring our full selves to work? And so we were discussing those conversations years ago, and it's not only internal, it's about your brand, it's about your image, it's about your reputation, it's about how you arrive and how you're perceived. You know, brands used to be seen as what we call black boxes, where you couldn't see what was happening internally. It was what they wanted to present. Now it's a glass box. So if you connect all those dots and you look at the opportunity, and you started today with some very compelling stats, and there are so many more around why this is a critical conversation, and it's a fundamental imperative for leaders of the future. For me, inclusive leadership is a critical skill for a 21st century leader, an adaptive, flexible mindset, one which combines the head, the heart, and the hands, all three of those in alignment, one that steps back and adapts to the way the world is changing, and connects and makes sure that we fully optimize the potential and talent we have and the opportunities we have. And so now more than ever, my conversations are with CEOs, with board levels, with huge brands. And I come at it from a diverse perspective. I look at their companies and I'm able to bring my personal and professional lenses and help advise them about where they can maximize their opportunity, where they can do the right thing, but also the smart thing. And so it's combining all of those things together to help everybody win.
Denise, obviously an important foundation, an important value structure up at Virtuzone as well when it comes to diversity and inclusion. But is it something that startups understand as well? You know, big multinationals get sort of diversity and inclusion. They need the help of Farrah and people like that. But when you're starting out and every single penny counts, is that something that's in the culture of startups?
I wouldn't think so. Not at that level, not at that point. I feel like when you're just starting up, there's so many other things that are crucial that you need to take care of. And that's probably not at the top of that pyramid of needs. But I do see that with scaling up comes also the society responsibility as well. And you're looking at other things like diversity being one of them and sustainability being one of them. You know, most startups don't have the capability and the bandwidth to look at that point.
Yeah, is that fair? I mean, again, and is that something that you see? I mean, it's all great and well when a big multinational has the budgets to come to a consultancy and say, okay, we've got this one wrong. We need to readdress this at the moment. But is it something you need to sort of seed from the very start of your business?
Yeah, it's really fascinating, Tom. I've noticed in the last 3 or 4 years, some of the globe's biggest brands that started up small, in a garage, over a dining table. And they're coming to us and saying, we've lost our entrepreneurial spirit. We lost those things because we were so busy building our business. And now we need to refresh and recalibrate and reset and make sure we have those mechanisms in place which focus on organizational culture and creating that ecosystem, but also on our talent and making sure they have a voice, they have a seat at the table, that we're, with and through them, we're delivering. And when we deliver for them, they deliver for us. And so I have seen that absolutely happening. In all sectors, our footprint at Global Diversity Practice covers everything from tech right through to FMCG, to energy, renewables, oil and gas. I mean, a whole set of sectors. And SMEs, certainly, I've seen those SMEs that are learning from the, some of the lessons from the past are the ones that are building it into their fabric from day one. Because once you've got that talent in the room and you've got a great idea and a concept and you have an appetite and there's a market opportunity, why wouldn't you want to make sure you fully maximize that by putting all the right fundamentals in place and organizational culture, behaviour, looking after your people is right at the core.
We want to talk more about this, and we have got a very special guest for exactly that purpose. Farrah Qureshi of GDP, not gross domestic product. No, not that GDP. We're talking the real GDP. Global Diversity Practice is with us here live in studio. Got any questions for Farrah? Please do get them in to us now. You can text us on 4001. WhatsApps, please, on 04 871 5500.
This is Starting Up with Tom Urquhart and Virtuzone.
Business set up with no...
And Denise has joined us from Virtuzone today, starting up with Virtuzone on Dubai Eye 103.8, live all the way through till 2. Our special guest is, of course, the CEO of the Global Diversity Practice, Farrah Qureshi, who's been kind enough to join us and proffer some of her extraordinary advice with regards to diversity and inclusion. Farrah, you mentioned there the figure 185 and counting, as they say. That's countries that you have touched down in, got the passport stamped and otherwise, as I said, always on the go and taking your message around. I mean, do challenges of diversity and inclusion change from country to country? And I suppose where I'm getting at is here. If you're dealing with a company, regardless of size, maybe a startup, maybe a multinational here in Dubai, here in the UAE, are the challenges for D&I different than other parts of the world?
Absolutely, and that's one of the core reasons that I set up Global Diversity Practice at the beginning. There was a lot of work in this space, but it was US-centric or UK-centric. And I think because of my own cultural lenses, my, in terms of my background and how I've navigated through my life, I probably saw the world from a slightly different perspective. I'm a glocalist, so I love global change, I love global transformation, but it has to be localized. And so when I looked around me and I saw an opportunity in the marketplace for presenting the global case, hence the birth of Global Diversity Practice, and hence delivery. When we're talking about it in LATAM, it's a different conversation. Yeah. When we're talking about it in Asia Pac, it's a different conversation. And of course, here it's a different conversation. There are common denominators, and the common denominator is the humanization of the workplace and that fundamental value of respect. But of course, it takes on different flavors. And if you don't adjust and you don't adapt, then you're not relevant. And I see huge opportunity in this region. That's what excites me. That's what's brought me here, in terms of the need to move towards a balanced economy, the rise of the untapped talent pool, the demographic dividend, 157 million young people coming into the workplace between 2018 and 2030. I see female empowerment and the opportunity there. Figures like it could add 576 billion if we were able to unlock the potential of gender equity within the MENA region. 70% of GCC companies have received training and want mentorship, but actually there's huge opportunities. 35% have formalized gender equity strategies, so on and so forth. So there's lots of hooks, the multi-generational, the cross-cultural interface here with different backgrounds and different nationalities, and the real eye and focus on innovation. When you look at all that, the digital transformation, all the visions, 2035, the UAE Vision 2031, KSA, the vision there, Qatar, Kuwait, they're all about localization and they're all about upskilling the workforce. So if you put all of those pieces to jigsaw together, then for me, inclusion, hence the name of my new company, Inclusion Intelligence, is the GPS navigator. It brings it all together, where we can service all those different needs when we understand people's frames of reference and what they need, and we can hook it onto key global, local, governmental, as well as corporate initiatives. And when we connect all those dots, then we get progress. And that's what excites me about being here. There are so many opportunities, and I'm really keen to bring all of those years of experience. And what I see here is a real focus on world-class excellence, but not exporting, but actually defining it in this region. And that's what excites me. I'm really looking forward to putting those proposals on the table, to maximising the knowledge I have, the real examples of difference and impact we've been able to make globally. across lots of different ecosystems and companies and bring it to this region with its very unique footprint. Family-owned businesses here, we have huge conglomerates. It's about adapting, and I'm very agile because of my organizational development background. But also, I want to bring concepts to the region, concept of unconscious bias, of behavioral economics, and I want to look at how we can develop leadership of the future, because some of the models we're using, they've been developed for 40, 50 years. They're not fit for purpose today.
Yeah.
And this region has an appetite for exciting new ways of working and thinking. So I'm here to help make that happen.
Here to help. Denisa.
I was just thinking, at Virtuzone, we do have a lot of entrepreneurs, single entrepreneurs who run the businesses, SMEs, but as well as, businesses on a bigger scale. And I'm curious to see, how many of them have even considered diversity and inclusion. And maybe you can give us a little bit of insight into the impact that diversity and inclusion has on organizational transformation and leadership for other companies.
Yeah. Certainly propels, your ideas and ambitions forward in half the time with maximum opportunity, particularly when you're doing more with less resource, as you would be if you're in a startup. You're very much, I'm doing this again at this stage of my life, setting up here in this region, setting up the business, the footprint, looking at local talent that I can train and develop in diversity, equity, inclusion. They can make this part of their career plans going forward. That really excites me, building local capacity and talent wherever I go. And so I think the key things are developing an inclusive culture, adopting inclusive behaviours as leaders and making sure that we're championing them, thinking about the shadow we cast, being adaptive and being close to our people and understanding their needs and wants. And then when you tie all of those things together, you start to deliver higher performance, higher productivity, excellence, and you move forward and you deliver your vision and mission. So for me, that line of sight is quite clear, but we have to line it up.
What about some of the pitfalls out there? And you're right to mention a couple of the sort of the popular phrases out there, unconscious bias, neurodiversity, etc., that people will include on their website. They'll include in the company narrative. They'll put it into their founding principles, etc. But words are one thing, actions are another thing as well. How important is it when something like cultural competence is something you're striving towards? How important, you mentioned leadership earlier.
Yeah.
If your leader hasn't got cultural competence, can you educate them that way, or is it something that needs to be addressed?
I think it's critical that leaders are role modelling and championing the behaviours they expect from their business.
Right.
And that they're constantly questioning. If you look at the skills of the future, particularly with the rise of generative AI, then things like vulnerability, empathy, understanding, compassion, creativity, these are critical skills of the future. They're the ones that we need today and for tomorrow. And so I think leaders' reflection on their own abilities, on how aware they are of these things, how in touch they are with these conversations, and how they're modifying and redefining and adapting as the world evolves around us, as we look at some of the mega and micro trends that are going on. What we do know is what got you here will not get you there. That's key. And that's not my book, but it's a title of a book that I've heard. And I think it's a really big challenge to all of us to not be complacent, to continually reinvent ourselves. And this is why this region really appeals to me, because it has. It's reinvented itself. It's look at what we're doing at the moment and the opportunities that are out there. And so it's a critical moment. If we can adopt that as part of our toolkit as leaders, and then we can filter it and we can role model it, then we start to set the tone in our organisations for behaviour, for expectations, and for then ultimately for success.
They call it a 30-second elevator pitch. You don't need to pitch anything to us, Farrah. It is, we are sold on this one. But what I am going to ask you to do is just to try and sum up, if you can, some sage advice. I mean, our listeners out there are those that are thinking of making the jump into starting up their business. They might have started up their business and they are wavering as to whether it's the right decision or not as well. You talked about tapping that entrepreneurial spirit a little bit earlier on. If you were to give 30 seconds to a minute advice on the D&I journey to a startup company out there. What's the thing to keep in mind?
So how we align our vision, our purpose with some of these key fundamentals. So if we can make sure that there is that thought and that reflection right from the beginning, and then we line up talent and resources and we maximize all of their opportunities by making sure that we understand our talent's needs, we accommodate their needs, we don't treat everybody the same. We understand the difference. We do the same for marketplaces, we do the same for our products. This conversation runs beyond our talent to the way we design, the way we go to market, the way we brand, and the way we present ourselves. So if we can have it as a core, and it's like a prism, and you look through everything through that prism, then you're more likely to achieve success in half the time with more maximum impact.
Extraordinary. Thank you so much indeed for your time. Listen, Farrah, if people want to continue this conversation, obviously they can reach out to our friends at Virtuzone. But if they want to find out more about global diversity practice, how it might help them individually, how it might help the organisation as a whole, how do they go about getting in touch with you?
So if you check out my LinkedIn profile, you should be able to find me on Farrah Qureshi at globaldiversitypractice.com. Also visit our website, and we'd be really happy to help you. And in terms of redefining even the conversation, our new business in this region is going to be called Inclusion Intelligence Practice. So you've heard about emotional intelligence, you've heard about artificial intelligence. Welcome to the skill of the future, inclusion intelligence.
Absolutely.
So you'll
amazing.
find us there very soon.
Well, we can talk about the future as we move forward. Thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate you coming in today and giving us some of your expertise. All the best with the challenges ahead, and thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Big thanks
Thank you,
to
Virtuzone.
Farrah for joining us. Up next, we're talking gaming. And it ain't just fun and games. Serious business around the world. Game developers from overseas flock into the UAE to take advantage of the country's gaming boom. Why? Well, we find out with a very special guest in just a few moments' time.
Your ARN News.
I'm Serena Kelly. The